Yeah, it's try and just try and be me and describe what I do to my family and friends. Like, what do you do? I'm an adventure guide. Well, what is that? I go, well, I work for Adventures by Disney, and then they go, what is that?
Welcome to another live bonus show of the DCL Duo podcast. As you can see, I am here without Brian tonight. Unfortunately, he's a little under the weather. He has laryngitis, so he really can't talk. So hosting the show would not really be helpful if he were here right now. But I'm super excited because obviously you can tell if you're watching live on YouTube, I am not alone. I am here with the one, the only adventure guide, Danny. Welcome to the show, Danny.
Hi, how are you? Good to see you.
It's so wonderful to see you. For those who don't know, we've talked about Danny before, but if you've been living under a rock and you don't know how we know Danny is we went on an Adventures by Disney river cruise in 2023 in December. We went on the Danube River. We did the Christmas markets cruise. It was myself, Brian, and Nathan. Just the three of us. We actually did not sail with friends as we usually do. And Danny was one of our 5 adventure guides. I have to say he was our number 1 adventure guide. And I can't say enough good things about our other adventure guides, but we just had this connection with Danny that was different than our connection with the other adventure guides. And our connection with him, I think, really stemmed from the way that he was with Nathan and how much of a connection he's so. I just can't sing your praises enough, Danny. The way that you connect with kids and adults alike, but the way that you connect with kids, and especially, I think you have a special place in your heart for kids with special needs, kids with autism. And so you just know how to talk to people in a way that is so warm and so welcoming. And you just make people feel so good when they're around you. And that just sort of makes people flock to you. So I don't always get sentimental on the show, but if not for you, I don't know that not to say our Adventures by Disney experience wouldn't have been wonderful regardless, but I don't know that it would have had the same impact that it did have on us because you were one of our amazing guides.
Well, I really appreciate that. And, everything it's funny because just coming off of the Easter holiday, spending Easter yesterday with my family, and my youngest brother has a 4-year-old who is diagnosed with autism. And there's a couple other nieces and nephews who are on the spectrum as well. And, I think I thought about this a long time. There's a lot of things going into being an adventure guide. Hi, everybody, by the way. I'm Danny. Nice to see you. And I appreciate all the wonderful accolades. But I would say this about, and I appreciate what you said, Sam. I think that there's 2 factors that go into it. I've been a professional actor for 30-something years, and a big part of what we do as actors is we study people and we investigate. I think it was Viola Davis said about Meryl Streep that she was a thief, that she steals stuff from people when she sees them. And I've even, I've been in restaurants and I hear somebody say something in a certain way at the table behind me, and I repeat it immediately because I'm so curious about how other people do things, people that don't think like me, people that have a different belief system than me, people that come from or have a different immigration story than my family does. And so I think that sense of acting really goes into me being interested in people in general. It was a lifelong thing about studying people and finding what's interesting and human about everybody. And then a couple of years ago, it dawned on me because the first couple of years of Adventures by Disney, I was really, I was just trying to do the job. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And then I think a couple of years in, it dawned on me, you already know how to do the job.
You're right.
So, it was like I was meant to do it. And then I said, well, then what I need to do and what I need to change is I need to guide with my heart first and keep this open and how I go into every aspect of what I do. And I think that happens with. I've noticed is quite success of that approach with kids, with adults, and with travel. And I don't. Nathan is so special to me too. Like when he just started going over his whole like school program and the songs that he had been practicing, and we sat in the lounge of the ship going, how many verses is he going to sing? Oh, he's going to sing the whole thing.
Absolutely.
So I think like going in with an open heart and just really being interested in what people have to offer. I want people to, I think we all have a sense of wanting to be understood, wanting to be heard, wanting to be seen. I know as a guide, I want that. And so, it's cyclical. It's give what you want to receive.
Yeah.
And I hope it's working. It appears to be working. So I appreciate that.
It's working. Well, I'm so thrilled to have you on this show. As I mentioned, Brian's not here, but I got a co-host and guest right here. We ain't never had a friend like Danny on the show. So it's just perfect to have you on. I got to give 2 shout outs before we do a deep dive, which is the first shout out is to our main sponsor at My Path Unwinding Travel. I know Karen Shelton is watching right now. She's going to pop on at the end of the show to talk about tipping on Adventures by Disney. She says, hi, everyone. Thanks for taking the time tonight, Danny. I know she was one of your adventure guides back in the day as well. And I also got to give a shout out to our other show, our live show sponsor, the WDW magazine, who are bringing to you the DCL magazine. Everybody knows we've talked about it before, but like the float out is out. Brian wrote an article about parasailing on Castaway Cay, about Nathan's first time parasailing.
Oh,
it is a heartfelt, heartstring tugging article, but also informative about parasailing at Castaway Cay. Now, before we dive into talking about your history with Disney, because I really do want to talk about that, and of course, being an adventure guide with ABD, I do want to note that there is some news out that just came out yesterday about Disney Cruise Line implementing some testing on the Wish starting today. They're going to be testing booking some activities through the app, through the Disney Navigator app. So I know there's been a lot of chatter in the community. What does this mean? We have no idea. Let me put this out there. We have no idea what this means, except that Disney Cruise Line is going to be testing on the Wish some features in the app where you booking some character experiences, booking some Aquamouse rides, and also booking a cake decorating contest. It sounds like one of these things like they do on, the Food Network, where you're competing against other teams. So some fun new stuff. And as I said, I said on social media in our Facebook group, I could see this being testing for the Adventure rather than being on for one of the American ships, because the Adventure is going to be such a big new ship. We don't know how they're going to possibly deal with, how to get priority for being on that roller coaster that's on the top deck or the other rides and some other activities, because you're going to have 6,000 passengers and Disney's never done that before. So anyway, I think it could be just testing for what's going to be happening in the Asian market. Then again, it could also be testing for what's going to be happening on, maybe the Treasure, the Wish, or the Destiny. So, I know that there are a few people out there. Tinfoil Mouse Ears, he's saying, I'm 10% worried. We've got Wesley saying we want to push back hard on reservations for things like Aquamouse. I'm with you, Wesley, but I also know that the roller coaster on the Adventure only fits like 2 or 4 people at a time. And so that may be something you'd want a reservation for. So it might be different in the US and the Asian markets. But with that, I want to return, because I've got Danny here and I don't want to waste any time by talking about Disney Cruise Line stuff, because we have a real Disney legend, let's say, with us. Now, Danny, I know that your background is as an actor, and we have some huge fans of yours watching right now. Linda Eve is on here, and she says she's been waiting 10,000 minutes for this interview. You are her favorite genie when she would go see Aladdin at Disney's California Adventure, and she had the pleasure of meeting you and seeing you in She Loves Me. She lives in the LA area. Yeah.
Okay. You saw me at South Coast Rep. That's amazing. That was That was right before the world shut down. That was the last thing I ever did on stage so far. I mean, that's till now. We'll
Till
see
now.
what happens. Yeah, everything's going to be on camera from now on.
Absolutely. Now,
Um,
Danny, I want to start like all the way back when you first got your first job at Disney. What was your first?
right.
Was your first job as Genie, or did you have a job before that with Disney?
No, I had a job before that. Shall I tell you all the deep, dark, dirty secret of my beginnings with Disney?
Yes.
I was hired at the El Capitan Theater. They used to do live entertainment between movie or to like introduce a movie. And this is way back in like Tarzan days. So that kind of tells you how long I've been with the company. So almost 30 years ago. And I was hired for that. And the director, it was my very first one. I was very stressed out. I was in an amazing company with the people that I was hired in with, some of the best singers in Los Angeles, studio singers. And so I was trying to like remember that I got hired with those people to remember the level that I was performing at, because it's like, well, because you know how it's just like imposter syndrome and you're always thinking, well, it's a hobby, but whatever. And then I go, wait a second, this one girl was like, she's now a background singer for Taylor Swift. So I
Yeah.
wasn't in bad company.
You're not a hobby actor, Danny. You're a professional
No,
actor.
no, it's very true. Like, and yeah, I have to keep reminding myself that sometimes, the many hats that I have worn over the years, but I think that's been some of the most exciting things about it is all the different identities and hats that I've got to wear. But I was hired for that show. The director was pretty hardcore, and she fired me because she kind of came for me in a rehearsal, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do. And she fired me at lunch, and I had carpooled with somebody that was a dancer who did not get fired that day. And so I had to sit through the rest of the rehearsal and wait. And I talked to the director. I said, I just want to know what's going on. And she goes, well, you just don't have any sparkle.
Boy, was she wrong about Sparkle. My
I
goodness.
was like, what? And I go, well, I think I've more than made up for the sparkle deficit since that conversation. And it was kind of funny because that happened. And I had also been hired or asked to be hired for a little show called Animazement at the same time, which was at the Fantasyland Theater. And I had also auditioned for being a caroler on Main Street. And the guy who wanted me for a caroler on Main Street, he and I had become friends, and he said, I got let go from this, El Capitan show. And he goes, well, why don't you come over to Disneyland? He goes, we want you here. We like you. We like you here. And he goes, forget about that LA stuff. Come to the park. And I did. And I was a caroler on Main Street back when we were wearing turn of the century costumes, singing on Main Street. That was my first gig. And I'll tell you, I can remember the impact that had on me still so clearly. There was nothing like, because we rehearse everything in the middle of the night at Disneyland because that is our stage and it's a public space. And so we were rehearsing. It was probably 2 or 3 in the morning, and there we all were, 8-part harmony, eight singers singing Silent Night on the porch on Main Street as the streets are wet and shiny and all the lights are on. And it's like, we're singing to nobody but ourselves. But it was so impactful. And I thought, wow, like here I am at Disneyland, the place that I wanted to go every year for my birthday when I was a kid. And we never went because there was 6 kids. So of course, it would have been too expensive for my parents. And there I was, like in the middle of the night, having the whole place to myself in a costume, singing with amazing singers again. And so that was my very first gig. And then I did that. And in the meantime, I rehearsed and learned Animazement, which was a great musical, kind of like when fairy tales get mixed up. Stephen Sondheim's Into the Woods sort of was reflected in what we did. So it was
You're
like
speaking my love
Ariel.
language,
Oh,
Danny.
Sondheim, baby.
Yeah.
So it was sort of like, it was like, with Ariel met Aladdin, and if
Mhm.
Aladdin ran into, he was trying to escape, and one of the doors he went to escape was Hades from Hercules. It
Ugh.
was a really fun show, high energy, lots of great Disney songs in it. And I got to sing a trio, which was between Pocahontas, Hercules, and Quasimodo.
You were
And
Quasimodo? Is that what you raised your hand?
yeah,
You were
I
great.
gotta sing. I gotta
Out
sing
there.
out there
But Out There is
every
the best
day.
song. That's literally the best song. Why, I mean, that's
that
yeah.
that was then that song. I tell you what, one thing about learning that song so fluently and singing it every day with great singers, people like Eden Espinosa, who is a Broadway legend now.
Mhm.
She was Pocahontas in the show, and we got to sing that together. And it was this, I mean, if you look up Animazement Trio, I think you can find it on YouTube. It's probably not me. But I did that for a while. But I learned that song, and Out There is such a beautiful, beautiful song. It's so actable. It's
Yeah.
got so much emotion. It shows off, beautiful range. And the win was, after practicing it day after day after day on that stage. And the funny thing was, the section that I sung by myself was pretty much a 32 bar cut.
Yeah.
So I just took Out There into every audition and nailed it every single time. So that's
Ah,
the
amazing.
beginnings of it.
I love that. Now, Linda is saying that West Beat actually does, which West Beat's a wonderful a cappella group based in
Oh,
LA, that they do the Animazement Trio song, and she says it's amazing. So for those looking for a YouTube version, I bet they have that. I bet that version's on YouTube. Even if you can't find the one of Danny doing it on YouTube, because maybe YouTube wasn't really a thing back then, right?
it wasn't. No, it would no. Well,
Yeah,
I mean, cell phones were like, I remember getting.
right.
Oh my gosh, cell
Right.
phone. They were
Somebody
my
might have
first
had
cell
like
phone.
a camcorder and recorded it and maybe saved it, right, for all posterity. But
There's
who
some
knows?
there's some recordings, but everything I've seen is not very high quality. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, Westbeat. I've never sung with Westbeat, but they, I think that's TJ Dawson, who used to do 3D theatricals, who I worked for as well. But TJ's a dear friend, and the people that do Westbeat, they've all been friends of mine, and their kind of concept came out of another group that I worked with at California Adventure Park, called Groove 66, which was an a cappella sextet that we used to have, and we sang all these really cool arrangements. We had an arrangement that was all about flight that we would sing over by Soren, and we had one that was all about California that we would sing at the old Sunshine Plaza, which is now where Carthay Circle restaurant is. So I did a lot. I was there. I worked at Disneyland before Disney California Adventure even had a shovel in the dirt. So I was still parking in the big parking lot outside of Disneyland, or parking over at Disneyland Hotel and sneaking in over there because they weren't so strict about the parking, riding the monorail into work. So it was a big win. I was like, oh, this is cool.
I love that. I love that. Well, I feel like a lot of our audience knows you from your role as Genie at Disney's California Adventure. I'm curious how that sort of came to fruition, because you were the original Genie, if I remember correctly, or were you the
Not
second?
a second. So here's
Okay.
here's how it worked. There was a woman named Annie Hamburger. She was sort of over entertainment, and she wanted to revolutionize what was going on at the parks. And in my opinion, it was very unpopular at the time. But in my opinion, I think she really did do just that, because what Annie wanted is she wanted a lot more inclusion in entertainment. So, people of different backgrounds and a little more diversity. But she also was like, well, we've got this gigantic theater. So the Hyperion Theater was built, and it was built with a specific purpose. They wanted to have live events happen there, maybe television shows. It was sort of, really kind of to fit in with this idea of Hollywood. So it was all very high tech. Sound and the visuals and all this. And they did the first show in there called Steps in Time. Steps in Time. Yeah, Steps in Time was there. And it was sort of done like an award show presentation, but with all Disney music, but all more hip hop or more updated, like a DJ had remixed it. But there was no story. But there was a story there, but there was no narration. And so you went in and you saw the show and it looked beautiful and the dancing was great and the singers were great, but people didn't connect. So then they redid it, gave it a story, and then people really didn't connect to it.
Sometimes that happens.
I mean, sometimes it happens. And so that show happened, and then they brought in Blast, which was the kind of color guard marching band stage show. And they did that in there for a while. And I guess it was sort of unclear what was going to happen next, because these were both kind of 20-minute shows that happened. But Annie said, no, let's do a book show, and we'll have it be almost an hour long, and we'll do the full retelling, and let's do Aladdin. It was a huge budget. I think, now don't quote me on this, but I think it was somewhere around $25 million production, quite high. And so when, I guess, having this much, like doing something very new, they didn't bring anybody that was already working in the parks to come be part of that show. It was, they wanted Broadway caliber talent. I didn't have my credits yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
So they wanted Broadway performers or television performers. And so they brought a guy in, they brought, I think 3 people in to do Genie, and they were all television actors. And one was going off to replace, he was going to go take over the role of, the lead role for the producers.
Yeah.
Bialystok and Bloom. Bialystok. And so this guy gets this tour, this other guy gets a television show, and they don't have a genie. And this is within 6 months of the show opening. You know what I mean?
Wow.
These actors are like, oh, I'm going to go do this job. I'm going to get this great amount of money, because they gave them great contracts. And all of a sudden they're like, we don't have any genies to cover all the days.
Yeah.
And so they decided to have an audition, and they had an internal audition, and they were very clear. They're like, no, you're not what we're looking for. And I think that one thing I've learned about being an actor and auditioning or going job interviews or doing podcasts, right? The more desperate you are to make it right, or the more desperate you are to want the job, it takes away from your natural, just your presence and who you are. Of course, you need to be mindful of like, okay, don't say this, say that. You know what I mean? Here's a smart way to answer things. But taking that desperation out of there really works. And I didn't think that I had any shot at getting this, but I had a great audition. And I was like, I don't know where these jokes are coming from right now, but thank you, God, or thank you, whoever, but these jokes are showing up and they're laughing. And
did they let you do your own like improvisation? Because that's I mean, a huge part of Genie, at least from what I've seen on Disney Cruise Line, because they have obviously their own version, which really I think is they took it from DCA because it's only an hour and 10-minute show, right? So it's really, but they really try and keep it, live, meaning they really try and keep it current with the jokes, and it's really the Genie who's the only one who's improvising or telling jokes. And so it's so interesting to see. I always wonder how much freedom they give you for that.
Well, there's a template, right? You know what I mean? There's like a template. In the audition, they gave us the script, and and they've written the original script had jokes written, but there was always sort of where it's sort of I guess in rehearsals they figured out where this was a good place to insert a joke or a pop culture reference or a current events reference or whatever. And that's great because the Genie is a very special character. And there's a reason why we all love him. And there's a reason and the original, in my conversations with Alan Menken, just drop that name. In my conversations with Alan,
big deal. Yeah. I mean, you're like trying to fill Robin Williams' shoes. Like let's be honest. Like that's the thing that like any genie has sort of working against them, right? Is
Right.
this iconic performance in an animated film
Right.
that you're constantly wanting to, live up to, right? This amazing, jokes and impressions and all of that, even though it's
Right.
done in animated, you don't see his face, but you can hear his voice the whole time.
Right. I mean, come on, Mrs. Doubtfire, the genie, probably.
Yeah.
How do you beat either of those performances? And so that was, I mean, initially I was like, okay, they were sort of testing to see if we could come up with the material in the audition. If it could we make what was written funny,
Right.
and then they go, so we did it sort of as is, and I think I even said to them, I think I could make this line funnier in the audition.
Yeah.
And they go, oh, and so then we were in the audition. They go, okay, go back, go look at this again and see what else you can come up with. So they were kind of like one guy would go in, another guy would go in, another guy, and it just worked. The day that I went to the audition, it just worked. And like I said, I was telling you about my conversation with Alan Menken was, he said that their initial thought, I mean, the whole concept they had of the genie initially was that they wanted him to be more Cab Calloway, call and response, sort of like,
Yeah.
if you hear like in Friend Like Me, that ba-da-ba-ba-da, that's all call and response.
Yeah.
And the only reason I found that out is because when they were getting ready to do Aladdin on Broadway, I was in rehearsals with Alan Menken for either Sister Act or Leap of Faith on Broadway.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, hey, I would love to, I'd be interested. And he goes, you're not right. And I go, what do you call it? He goes, because we want to go back to the origins of where we saw the character. And he goes, so that's going to be more Cab Calloway. That's, going to be African-American actor. He goes, so just by that, you don't qualify. He goes, I'm sure you could do it. He goes, but we want to sort of stick to a different kind of identity for the genie on Broadway.
Mm.
And they had really stuck to that idea, and were not getting anywhere when they were doing the movie. And they said Robin Williams, and everybody was a little bit like, oh. And Alan said that Robin came in to do his screen test,
right?
And that everybody knew. And they were like magic, absolute magic, and panic, because how do we rein this guy in? How do we animate? Like, what do we choose to animate? How do we animate after he's done it? Can we do it? And then the animator's like, no, this is fun. This is going to push us, and we're going to have a great big hit on our hand. And of course, it was the mega hit for a long time. I think until almost Nemo was sort of, I think, what dethroned Aladdin is one of the top grossing films of Disney history.
Gosh.
So yeah. So I got it, and then I went in, and that was intimidating. And but I learned a lot. I did the role for 12 years.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, incredible. And I honestly, you're I think the most well-known genie from DCA. I mean, people know, people know you, Danny, and they're like, yeah, he was the best genie by far, no question. Well,
they called me the loose cannon. This was because
it doesn't surprise me, because you probably improvised a little more than they would have liked here and there. That would be just a little.
I spent a lot of time in note sessions with the stage managers and directors.
Sure, but listen, like, here's the thing, though. People who know how to read people also know where the limits are, right, of what the comedy can be and should be, especially in a family environment like Disneyland. So even if you're improvising, I'm sure you were always within the balance of appropriateness, and so I'm sure they still loved every minute. I'm sure everybody who saw you loved every minute of watching you. Danny, I got to switch gears and dive into you being an adventure guide, because I want to know how that happened. And then I want to dive into talking about your experience. We'll talk a lot of favorites because you've had many years now being an adventure guide. And I know we can't possibly talk about everything that you've done as an adventure guide, but how did that happen? How did you find out about Adventures by Disney? How did you become an adventure guide? And then I have a couple of questions from the audience. We're getting live questions as we're talking. I'm starring the ones that I think will be great, that people will want, that more than one person will want the answer to. And then I'll dive into those. But let's start with how you became an adventure guide.
It's a perfect segue from what I was already talking about. So I did the show for 12 years and still packing houses, they were still packing the houses. And then they announced that the show would close. I mean, kind of towards the end, there was a couple announcements that the show was going to close. Like it was sort of threatening to close. And then they said, no, for sure. In a year, we got one more year of this show, and then we'll close. I think it was the summer of 2000. I think summer 2016, I believe it was. And I was in the dressing room. I was working on a new show because I did many things. I think my total show knowledge at Disneyland was 15 tracks, entertainment tracks at the same time, which was the record.
That's crazy, by the way. That's a crazy number.
That there's even 15 tracks for a guy to do at Disneyland. But, that a cappella sextet show that I did, I taught myself all the music. There was no rehearsals for me until after we got into it. But I was doing the Frozen sing-along as Eric, the historian. And my friend Jason was doing it too. And we were like, oh, was it that? I think it was that. There was some show we were doing. I'm pretty sure it was Frozen. And it was. My memory goes into dressing rooms, green rooms, and stages. So I know I was in a dressing room talking to Jason about this, but I'm going, well, but it was the right place. And he says, okay, well, he goes, so Aladdin's closing. And I go, yeah. And I'm like, I'm really sad because I will miss the character so much. And he goes, he just says, have you ever thought about auditioning for Adventures by Disney? And I said, I mean, that would be amazing. Of course, I've been intrigued by it. He goes, I think you'd be a really good fit. He goes, you're entertaining, you're a storyteller, you're easy to talk to people. And I go, yeah. And he goes, the applications are coming up. And he goes, I'll put in a good word for you. And I said, thanks, Jason. So I applied as well as 3,000 other people.
For like crazy. 4 stops, right?
Right. Just like, it was very small. I applied. I think I just thought about it. I started asking other people that I knew that had gotten into it as well. Mm-hmm. And they just said, just be smart, follow the 4 keys, which is, now the 5 keys. They said, follow the 4 keys, have good manners, and be yourself. And, just be aware of what that means. And so go to this audition, which was a full day at the Grand Californian, breakfast included. They had mixers, so getting to know people, finding out information about it. Now, I didn't realize that people like Heather and Craig and Katie and Leslie, all these people who had created Adventures by Disney were going to be there. Bruce, all these heavy hitters, they showed up, they're wearing their name tags. And they were some of the people we were supposed to collect the information from. And they were the people that were sitting down at the breakfast table and the lunch table with us. And they said, you have to do
intense.
It was super intense. We had to also do a 3-minute presentation where it was 1 minute introducing ourselves and then 2 minutes talking about a current destination that was being offered by Adventures by Disney. And the 2 minutes basically was, you're an adventure guide, you're welcoming the guests to their trip, and you're going to go through the trip with them. And that's sort of all they said. And I was like, I'm not even sure what these people do. Like, I'm getting this job. What do these people do? And so my win was that I auditioned, did my presentation after lunch. And I realized everybody was, again, so desperate to do it right, to fit in the mold. Mm-hmm. And I think I would like to just say, because I'm an acting teacher, and I always tell my students, celebrate your weirdness. And mm-hmm. I celebrate my weirdness, and I celebrate my guests' weirdness too. I think you've seen that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like, absolutely.
And so I'm sitting in this room and I'm going, I am bored. And everybody here, I mean, not that the people weren't doing great presentations, but it was like, we'd had lunch, we were getting post-lunch sleepies, and I had all my notes, right? All my notes to like the thing. And I was like, forget it. I'm just going to
Just gonna
talk
wing it.
about
Yeah.
what's coming at the top of my head. And I just said, hey, and I riled up the crowd. I got them to do call and response, which is sort of a funny tie back too. And then I just said, hey, and I talked about the Danube River because that was the one reason why I wanted to audition, because it was such a destination for my grandmother and my favorite aunt, that they had always talked about wanting to go do a river cruise on the Danube. And when I saw it offered, I said, I should go try and get that job for my grandmother and my aunt.
Oh
And
my God, how cool.
and guess what? My aunt passed away. And the day that she passed away was the day that I got my phone call that I got Adventures by Disney. And
Oh.
yeah. And then when I was at training, because they don't, not training, orientation, they don't tell you where you're assigned yet because they're still feeling you out.
Mhm.
My manager, Leslie K. Combs, she was just hinted big. She's like, so for example, on river cruising, we're going to have a couple of adventure guides because somebody will have to be, maybe a historian for the trip. And somebody like, say, Danny would have to be in charge of the entertainment. And I was like, are you telling me what I think you're telling me? And she goes, don't say anything. So,
But
so
that's so true. I mean, who's going to be the entertainment if not you, Danny? I mean, I'm not that there aren't other guides who are also, big personalities and have an entertainment background, right? I think there are definitely lots of guides who do have that, but like
very.
each guide sort of have their different strengths, right? Or are they sort of a local and have like deep historical knowledge and background in the particular location that you're guiding? Are they the most organized person who can divvy up people into groups and get things sort of keep people on track? Are they the storyteller? Are they the entertainer, right? Like you sort of all have your own roles. I don't like, I mean, you all have to sort of float across those lines, I think probably quite often, but you can definitely see that the way that they match you all up, there are certain people who have certain strengths and certain people who have different strengths. And then you, like I said, you have to maybe float into different roles depending upon what the trip is and what's going on. But I feel like as a adventure guide, you are like historian, entertainer, babysitter, therapist, and tour guide all wrapped into one. Would you say that? I mean, am I right?
Yeah, it's try and be me and describe what I do to my family and friends. Like, what do you do? I'm an adventure guide. Well, what is that? I go, well, I work for Adventures by Disney, and then they go, what is that?
Right.
So I mean, I've been doing like earmarked things at the park and in person. And it's so funny because, and this may, who knows, you know what I mean? For you too, Sam, and anybody listening to it, it's one, urgency. And then two, like, how do you sell something if you don't know what it is,
Right.
And so I think that I was sitting there and telling my mom, because my mom always thought that I was on a cruise ship doing a show. And I was like, no, I said, what are you saying when you're on this? Mom, like, I'm singing karaoke on Thursday nights on the Danube, like, but I guess my brother-in-law sort of said it's basically a trip that has the confidence, the quality, and the security that you want out of a Disney product. Absolutely. And you're the person facilitating that. I said, that is maybe the best description of it I've ever heard. And I always just sort of say that I'm sort of like a travel concierge rather than just a tour leader, because there's so much more that we do than just tour lead, because we are making personal relationships with people. And I mean, even to you and I, when was that trip? Was that 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
2 year. Well, it's I guess a year and a half ago at this point. It was December 2023, Christmas 2023.
Yeah, but look, I mean, it's when I see you, it's like, oh, it's Well,
and I saw you for those who saw the pictures I posted on social media. Two of the pictures that I posted on social media, I took of Danny on the Treasure just 5 months ago, not even 5 months ago, on the Treasure because he and I were both on a preview. I was on with Karen Shelton from My Path Unwinding Travel. Danny was on with a friend of his who got an invite through their travel agency. And Danny happened to be on the Treasure, which has, an Aladdin themed atrium with Aladdin and Jasmine on the carpet in the atrium. And the genie's lamp. Look at the fireworks happening, Danny, behind you.
That was amazing.
That was amazing. So I took this fantastic picture of Danny looking right at the lamp in the atrium. And then another picture. There's beautiful both artwork and tapestries throughout the ship that are Aladdin themed. There's big painting of the genie, and I have Danny on the stairs, and I got this picture of him standing right in front of the cartoon version of genie. It's just incredible. So I did, of course, get to, as soon as I saw Danny in the atrium, ran over, big hugs, all of that, because you're right, it's the way the connections you make it. So this is not just like a tour guide who takes you on a tour of the Vatican. This is somebody who is with you for, an entire week, maybe a few days, depending upon what the adventure is, but who is really the person holding your hand throughout this entire experience. And that's what I think you mean by the travel concierge, because it's not just a tour company that, arranges where you're going to go and what you're going to do. It really is, they guide you through the entire experience. I want to ask about some of your favorites, because people always want to know, like, okay, if I have only one adventure that I can do, we know they're expensive. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. Adventures.
They're not Groupon.
There's no Groupons. There's like very few discounts out there. There are some discounts, like sometimes early booking discounts for our podcast cruise, which is going to be an Adventures by Disney River cruise in Holland and Belgium next year in July it's over 4th of July in 2026. There was an early booking discount. Apparently, it might still even be available. So if you're interested, obviously reach out.
Are you listening to our show because you want to make the most out of your next vacation? Great news, the fabulous team over at My Path Unwinding Travel can help guide you so you don't miss a thing. Their team of professional travel advisors are caring, knowledgeable, and experienced. It's why we use them to book our own travel. My Path Unwinding Travel is an authorized Disney vacation planner, which means they are recognized by Disney for their expertise and service. They have sailed on all the Disney ships, including in concierge, visited the theme parks, adventured with Disney, relaxed at Aulani, and so much more. Whether it's a Disney cruise, a theme park vacation, or Adventures by Disney, or if you are looking to expand beyond the mouse, My Path Unwinding Travel will elevate your next vacation planning experience. Even if you have already booked, reach out for a complimentary consultation to make your vacation even more magical. Ready to talk to the experts? Head over to mypathunwinding.com/DCL Duo or email dclduo@mypathunwinding.com so they know we sent you their way. Thanks, My Path Unwinding, for sponsoring today's show. Now back to the episode.
If you had to say, one or two that are your sort of top adventures, it could be river cruise, it could be land-based, it could be one of those expedition ones. I mean, what would you put as your couple of top adventures?
That's a really hard question because
right?
I look into my trips that I guide. I look at it the way that I look at my guests. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like I find the value in everything in every place that we go. And then on the trips, what I think is another great thing about it is that we can modify if we have to. If we have a kid with special needs, we can modify trips, or or adventures or excursions or what we do. Or if we have people that have mobility issues or or food restrictions, we handle all that stuff, and we really try and make it so that nobody feels left out, that nobody has less of a vacation that they would because they have certain restrictions or certain things. I get asked about kids on the spectrum all the time. Actually, I actually think we're a great vacation for families with kids on the spectrum, because of things like the adventure guides, who we're not trained, but we're good with people and we're great problem solvers. And as far as favorites, it's really hard. But I think, Sam, I'm just going to say it. it's got to be that river cruise to the Christmas markets.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know how you can beat that experience, because we don't have anything like that in the States. There's not a place where you get on this beautiful boutique hotel ship and you stop every day at a new city that it has its own vibe to it. And the Christmas markets have their own vibe to them and different things at the Christmas market. And you know me, I was a nut about what there was at the Christmas market. Like, go get this bread that's got cheese and bacon in it, or, or go to this place and they've got the best glühwein and they got the cutest souvenir cups and all that stuff. And Christmas was always such a big deal. My mom loved it. But I think Christmas markets would be number one. And I always say, my biggest phrase that I've been saying lately is get stuff out of your bucket list and put it in your calendar. Get it out of your bucket list and put it in your calendar. Bucket list, we also have another term with bucket, and it's called kicking the bucket. And if you kick the bucket and it is full of your hopes and dreams, what a waste. You know what I mean? Like, there's such an urgency to life. I have I have a friend who just discovered that his father, who's only in his 50s, has early onset dementia. Oh. So now their experiences in life are different,
Right.
And we've had guests who are early stages of dementia, and it's been such a treasure to be able to share in a family's experience of creating some of the last memories that they'll make together too. Or at least making some memories that, at least for this little amount of time, can be treasured. I would say anything Italy is always top notch from Adventures by Disney. I did Amalfi Coast last year, and I cannot stop thinking about a boat tour around the island of Capri. It really, and burrata and pizza and pasta from Italy, I didn't realize we were doing it all wrong until I went there. And I'm going back to Germany this summer, which is a really soft spot in my heart. It was my first land-based destination that I did after river cruising and doing the Disneyland resort. I don't know. This is a hard question, Sam. I want to tell everybody.
No, I love it. I love this, but I know
Disneyland is great too, because it's 5 days. It's more affordable. If you're a 10-day trip is going to be around, it's going to be a lot.
Yeah.
But a 5-day trip at Disneyland is going to be well worth what you pay, because you're getting
that Henson Studios. I'm telling you, I'm very, very
let's hope we get it back. They haven't left a lot yet, but let's hope we get that back.
Yeah. So I love this comment from Tinfoil Mouse Ears, our friend CT. Love that. Off the bucket list and on the to-do list. I think, the theme of that is you'll never regret taking that vacation with your family member. I had this lovely conversation just this past week with Ashley Norton, who because she went on the Disneyland adventure with you, and her family. That we were talking about their trip to Alaska that they did on Disney Cruise Line just a couple of years ago, and she came on the show to talk about it. And it was the last trip they took with her dad. And every time we talked about it a couple of times on our cruise, and I'm tearing up just thinking about it as you're talking about, just the experiences. There comes a point where you may not be able to travel with that person any longer. And so you won't regret having taken that trip, whether that's on Disney Cruise Line, Adventures by Disney, or really any trip, right? That I will say, as a family, we have decided that the things we spend our money on are the experiences, are those the trips, whether they're on Disney Cruise Line or on Adventures by Disney, right? To us, that's worth more than some material thing that I could buy. And so it's just, I'm getting all the feels as you're talking, because I feel the exact same way as you do about this. Now, I've got a couple more questions that I want to ask. I have two different folks who are asking me about advice you would have for somebody who wants to be an adventure guide. And is there something about, some kind of resume that you would recommend, or any experiences you would recommend for someone to do in order to maybe build that resume to become an adventure guide?
Great question. I think and it doesn't have a single answer, to be quite honest. But I would say, I would say that like adventure guides are kind of, as they look at us, if you think about the origins of the company, there was a Walt personality and a Roy personality, and they were not the same men. They were brothers and they were close, but Walt was right brain. Roy was definitely left brain. Roy got the company out of the red many, many times, but they both did. And I think that's the thing, is that there is a place for both creative, childlike, playtime, and then there's time for logistics and back of house and all that. And that's, I think, one of the biggest challenges for adventure guides is we do all this work focusing on the guest, but there was a lot of logistics and back of house that has to get done so that the rest of the trip, the next day, even the evening, runs smoothly. And that what your takeaway from it runs smoothly. Your 1,000 photos that you have access to that we take of your trip, or more, or whoever it is. We have to do reports. If anything happens, emergency reports or first aid things, anything like that. If something goes wrong with the vendor, we know we got to make notations of that. Or call the vendor beforehand and say, hey, we have a woman, true story. We have a woman who's allergic to black pepper, and she cannot have black pepper in any of her food.
Wow.
And they're like, the food's already made. And we're like, okay, well, we need you to make something else before tomorrow at 2. You know what I mean? So all that stuff. So getting a resume together, I think, is one, show that you're a good problem solver. 2, show that you really love people, and 3, that you've got a passion either for a place or for a person, and then be authentic. This is not something I can't fake this, and that was sort of what sort of was the realization, like, just lead with your heart, because this is impossible to fake. You know what I mean? I would have burnt out a long time ago if I was trying to do something that I didn't already naturally kind of do automatically. So that's my answer for that.
I love that. I have noticed that a lot of the folks who become adventure guides also start out in other parts of the company or the world. When I say the company, I mean sort of worldwide, Walt Disney, all kinds of in different roles, whether that's cruise line or in the parks, or in the studios. Like, there's a lot of folks come from other roles within the Walt Disney Company, sort of as a whole. I wanted to know, actually, another question from somebody watching is asking, how long are you away from home, and how do you balance being away from home for, big chunks of time?
That's a challenging question to answer, because the work-life balance is hard. Last year, I was gone for 3 months doing British Isles, which is a 10-day trip that goes from Ireland to Belfast to Edinburgh to London. Beautiful trip. Oh my gosh, what an amazing. We get a private viewing of the crown jewels at the Tower of London.
Oh, that's amazing.
The clout of the paddle of power is phenomenal. But, I think it's a lot easier now that we've got things like FaceTime. So you can FaceTime at home. You've got to make, if you care about home, you've got to make home a priority in your guiding as well. So I always say adventure guides should treat other adventure guides with the same respect, kindness as they do their guests. And they should also treat their family the same way. So, family is understanding, but the worst thing that happens is that my whole vegetable garden is dead when I get home. So,
right.
But my dog survives, my partner survives, everybody survives. And have good friends that are willing to be like, they understand what you're doing. So I can have friends come over and watch the dog or water the garden or whatever. But I think it is hard. That is definitely a challenge, finding the balance in work and life.
Well, and I will say, I think if you're somebody who is single, that maybe having a pet at home is not a feasible balance with being an adventure guide, because you are away for chunks of time. Now, I've got maybe time for one more question before I'm going to bring in Karen Shelton, who from My Path Unwinding Travel, because she is waiting in the wings. Because I know we had some questions when we had Rebecca, one of your colleagues from Adventures by Disney, who used to be a DCL entertainment cast member. a lot of folks were asking about tipping, so I want to bring Karen on to talk about that because I'm not going to ask you, Danny, to tell us what we should tip you because
I'll tell you.
you all are too nice. You're gonna say like, oh, whatever you tip is fine. But like, for those out there, river cruises, the tip is included. You can tip on top of that, but the tip is included. But land-based adventures, it is not. So tipping is expected for your adventure guides. You'll typically have, can't remember if it's 2 or 3. Danny, I don't know, in a land-based adventure.
2.
2. Okay, because river cruises is very different. It's typically 5 because you have way more guests in the group. But there's one more question I wanted to ask, which is, what's the one thing you wish every guest knew before they went on an Adventures by Disney adventure? Because I do think there's not as much information out there. That's why we've tried to, we're the DCL duo, Brian and I, but we have tried to cover Adventures by Disney as well, because there really aren't a lot of resources out there of covering and talking about Adventures by Disney. And we do think that Disney Cruise Line is the gateway drug to Adventures by Disney.
Well, I agree. And I would also take it a step further and say the gateway drug to Adventures by Disney. And I think Holly Liska is on this watching too. And she's taken this trip a couple of times. Hi, Holly, my buddy. I love that I have all these agency people that are now my buddies, which is amazing.
Yeah. Holly's on. Kirsty Beckwith is on.
Oh, Kirsty.
She's saying you're your favorite ABD guide from Kirsty and Lee. R. Ratcliffe is saying Danny's great. We enjoyed our ABD trip with him.
Hi, guys.
I told you, I've got Ashley Norton on here commenting as well. I mean, I can't read through every single comment that's coming through, but we've got tons of fans watching.
I'm tearing up, honestly.
Yeah.
I'm tearing up. I think it's I think the Disneyland trip is the gateway drug to Adventures by Disney. It's 5 days. It's 5 days. Well, the Christmas market too, right? I mean, come on, but the land base is 5 days. You start in Hollywood, you go to the Chinese theater. We went to Henson Studios and we're hoping to get it back. We go to Imagineering and we go to Walt Disney Studios, and then we go to Disneyland and we spend 3 nights at the Grand Californian. We've got backstage access at different things that sort of has been changing. I'm not going to tip the hat too much about what's happening, but we have backstage experiences at both California Adventure and Disneyland Park. And then we set the guests free to the parks, but we load their tickets up with lightning lanes, like 5 lightning lanes, or is it lightning lanes?
Yeah, now they're, yes.
Yeah. But these are multi-experience passes that will work on any attraction, even that doesn't have a lightning lane to it. Meals, and then premier seating for fireworks, premier seating for parades, and then a couple people in the parade might stop and give your adventure guide a hug every now and then.
Right. Perform with you. I will tell you, Robbie Abney, who, Captain America DCL, he said he worked with you at Disneyland as well. I mean, it's like our communities have a lot of crossover, Danny, but also, I mean, you also just know everyone. So I'm
the mayor.
The mayor of Disneyland. Well, I'm gonna bring Karen in because I know she also adores you. Welcome to the show, Karen Shelton of My Path Unwinding Travel.
Hey, Karen.
Hey, how are you all? Good to see you.
We're so excited to have you on, Karen, with us. I know that, Karen was commenting in the live chat that she found a video of you, Danny, introducing her husband, Harv, singing Sweet Caroline on board the Danube River Cruise for karaoke night. And that Harv was voluntold to sing that.
But he crushed it. I knew he would crush it. That song is a no-fail. We set you up for success.
Danny had the right eye. Harv would never raise his hand, but he was sitting in a prime spot. And I think it was like, what do you call it? It was like guerrilla.
Yes, guerrilla karaoke.
Guerrilla karaoke. You did not sign up. You were pulled up.
You were pulled up. I love that. That's like in law school where you get the Socratic method where the professors just fire questions at you randomly and you have no idea it's coming. You're just voluntold to answer that question. Yeah.
But we did it easy. We did like a Sweet Caroline. We got a group of guys up to do YMCA, or Macho Man. Hey, balloons. But we set it up, we set it up for there to be songs that we knew everybody would join in. We just want to make sure everybody had the chance to get up on stage and be part of the show. So
Yeah. And I remember one of the teens on board crushed their song. It was from Greatest Showman. And she got up there and brought the house down. So it's just one of those moments that you think, how can Adventures by Disney bring so many people together on a river cruise? Because I started out doing the land-based tours where you have a smaller group, and you think, when you're going to have this many people, can you have that same sense of like community? And that night I was like, yes. I mean, everybody that was there, just it was just a moment.
That night was a very special karaoke night. It really was. It really was. We were like, okay, we need to do this all the time. Let's do this all the time.
I love that. We didn't have karaoke on ours, but Danny did do a special performance with one of the entertainers that came on board. I don't even remember what country we were in, to sing. And Danny and she did a duet together. And I don't even remember what song it was, but I just remember minds were being blown everywhere across.
I forgot all about that, but I sure did. Sure did. Well,
it's fabulous.
My mother would be very disappointed if I refused to sing in public. So that's for mom.
Okay. Well, Karen, I wanted to bring you on for two reasons. One, I wanted to make sure people know about our Adventures by Disney river cruise that we're doing as the DCL Duo version 2.0 river cruise, because it's obviously not a cruise on DCL, it's a cruise on ABD. But tell folks like how to reach out to you if they're interested in hearing more and booking. And do we know if ABD still has those early booking discounts available?
I think they do for a short while longer. They are limited per category per date, but I think we may still have a few left for our DCL Duo 2.0 date in July 2026 on the Holland and Belgium itinerary. We already have such a great group that's going to be joining Sam and Brian and Nathan. So we have families, we have adults only. And I mean, I think that's also one of the great things about this itinerary, about river cruising, is that everybody fits in. And, there's times, it's just kind of like anything with Disney. There's times where, you're going to have your adult only time and the kids are going to be off doing something fun in one corner of the ship that's really not too far because it's a small, intimate river ship.
The ships are not that big.
Yeah. But I mean, it's going to be such a great group, but there's room for more. And one of the great things about river cruising with Adventures by Disney is it really is all inclusive. Mm-hmm. Every part of your adventure is included except your airfare and travel insurance. So, by the moment you land, you're picked up. If you have a pre-night with Adventures by Disney at the hotel, you're taken care of, you're taken to the ship, and all of it is taken care of. So including, as you mentioned, the gratuities for the adventure guides, Disney really says, hey, this is all inclusive. The gratuities are part of that package. And but you may find when you see all the ways that the adventure guides go above and beyond, and the way that they act as a concierge and an entertainment host and, just a problem solver, you may decide that you may want to, add a little extra gratuity. But I have never felt that it's expected. There is no formal, at least when I've sailed, there's no formal procedure for like an envelope or anything like that, which is different than on the land tours. And so that's the question. On the land tours, you'll see on your itineraries that there's things that are not included. There's certain meals that are on your own, certain times that you're on your own to fill in the time as you wish. And then the gratuities for your 2 adventure guides are additional. As of today, Adventures by Disney recommends a gratuity of $10 to $12 per person, per night, per guide.
Okay.
So you will get envelopes in your pre-departure box is typically when they're sent, and it'll have a little, some instructions and reminders for you, so that you can have those prepared. And those are usually given to the adventure guides on the last night of your adventure. So, for each couple, let's say on a 7-night adventure, we're going to go with the higher end, $12 per person per night. That would be
Danny's giving thumbs up.
That would be based on the recommendation from Disney. That would be $168 per couple, $336 per family of 4, per guide. Right. So you need to be prepared. Maybe Danny can add, I know there's been more recently the ability to pay guides by Venmo. I think that might be an individual situation.
It's, you know what, Venmo's kind of great when you're not when you're overseas, because
exactly. Right.
Carrying around, I did 6 back-to-back 10-day trips. And so, hotel safes aren't always safe. You know what I mean? And so it's to carry around this wad of cash with you throughout the summer. It's stressful. And then, then the other option is, well, do I mail it home really quick in a bag of coffee or something? So Venmo and PayPal, they work for us. Our destination, our in-destination guides, they always like to be paid in cash. So and we do, we do too. It's great. You know what I mean? But sometimes when there's bills to pay, a Venmo payment and a PayPal payment is a nice thing to have. So
yeah.
It's always
that's great.
We should never have an awkward conversation. I mean, it never feel like you're going to have an awkward conversation with your guides. Mm-hmm. I am very willing to tell people, hey, this is what the standard is through the company, and I prefer to have Venmo because I've got bills to pay back at home. So I don't have any shame in talking about that. I work hard. So I get paid, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
absolutely.
So, as we all do.
I never even thought about the guides having to carry around all that cash.
Me neither. Great point. I'm glad that you both brought this up, because it didn't even occur to me. But yeah, if you're in Europe for 5 weeks and you've got, you're doing river cruises or you're doing back-to-back land-based cruises, right? Like, you're traveling, and so you don't want to have that cash on you all the time, and you can't go to like your local bank. It's just the European banks. You don't have an account there.
Right.
So, yeah. I mean, you'd want, obviously, some of the cash you might use as your own spending money, but not all of that cash, right? So,
right. We love cash. And it's kind of fun because you just have to go, oh, look what I made this year. You know what I mean? But, but at the same
you can swim in it. Like, you could be like Scrooge McDuck swimming in it in the bed, right?
But the minute you misplace it, it's money is not replaceable.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that would be stressful, I think, to keep track of. And you have enough to keep track of. So, but it's all clearly lined out. I said as of today because, perhaps when the 2026 season comes along, they'll increase the recommended gratuities. I don't know. I have no basis to say that, except that everything is getting more expensive. So yeah. I would think that the recommendations probably should go up a little bit. Because I feel like it's been in this range for quite some time.
It's been in the range a long time. I think a good standard is just sort of consider, if you're going to pay, like say that, British Isles is about a $10,000 trip per person because it's 10 days. And my thought is this, if, I've never heard anybody at the end of one of my trips say that sure was an expensive vacation. You know what I mean? I've never heard that comment. It's more like that exceeded my expectations, like beyond what I could imagine. And so I just sort of go, like, for a week, $100 tip for your guides is not unheard of, and I don't think ridiculous either for like a 7-day trip,
Absolutely.
And you know what I mean? So it's like, I mean, I've paid that to a restaurant for one meal, before for gratuity, but you get a whole week of adventure and meals and things being taken care of. So I think of it as gratuities that way. What in your everyday life are you going out and spending the gratuities and using them for? And it should make things make a little bit more sense for guides.
Yeah.
It really does. And and during your vacation, you're not really opening your wallet for much of anything.
Right.
So, I like to say about Adventures by Disney, they're pricey but priceless. And so, it's kind of like, so when the vacation is over, your question is, when do I see the photos? It's never like, oh my gosh, I have to, you're going to gladly pay those gratuities and want to do more and want to stay in touch with your guides and want to go on the next adventure with them. I saw, Danny, that there was a question about where you were guiding this summer.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm pretty excited. I kind of got to ask for what I wanted. I'm going back to Germany. I love that itinerary. I had to learn itineraries for the past 2 or 3 seasons, but I'm also going to go co-guide with one of my dearest friends in the world. Her name is Zuza. She is an adventure guide. She's the only adventure guide from Germany currently. I think we may have hired a couple. She is born in Poland, raised in Germany. She's a concert violist. She's got like 5 degrees. And she is wickedly funny. And she and I are like a brother and sister team. And so I said, I want to go see my sis. And so they said, please come back to Germany. So I'm back to Germany this year. And of course, Backstage Magic, our Disneyland trip, which I'll always have that filtered in. So.
Fantastic. So I've got one final question to end the show with today, which is our friend Chad Pennycuff from My DVC Points podcast. He set a new bucket list goal, ABDs to all the soaring over the world locations. Who's with me? That's not exactly the question. Because I'm with you, Chad. But the question,
we're all in.
We're all in. But the question for Danny is, but your bucket list destination, would your bucket list destination be doing that around the world, Adventures by Disney? Or would it be, is there someplace else in the world that you haven't been? And, if so, it has to be someplace you haven't been. What's your bucket list?
Does it have to be something Adventures by Disney offers?
No, it doesn't have to be something Adventures by Disney offers. Just someplace in the world you want to go, Danny.
Okay, I want to say this is just like, so let me see if I can wrap this up and make it, because I think it's a good point to kind of close on too. Travel shrinks the world so we can see it, that we're all here together, that we are all after the same things. Going and meeting people who lived in communism for years and years, meeting people that lived on the other side of the Berlin Wall. That's why I love going to Germany, like this story, their tricky history, and then, and learning how they're coming back and healing from that. And all these people that I was so afraid of when I was a kid. I think that's what the beauty of travel is. The other thing about travel that I think is important is our world is changing. We're seeing things on our northern pole, on our southern pole changing. We're seeing things changing in our oceans. This is not a pointing finger kind of conversation. This is just, I know things are changing. So I'm going to give you 2 answers. I didn't get to go to Antarctica, and I would love to see Antarctica. And I want to see the Maldives before they don't exist anymore. Those are my
absolutely. Those are amazing. So I got to give special thanks to Karen and My Path Unwinding Travel, of course, for sponsoring our show. I want to tell people, if you want to book your next adventure or DCL cruise or other vacation destination, make sure to reach out to mypathunwinding.com/DCL Duo or email Karen at DCLduo@mypathunwinding.com. And if you want to find out about our river cruise, the DCL Duo Cruise 2.0, you can also reach out to Karen in that fashion. And then, of course, I absolutely must thank the amazing Danny for being here, for talking with us. We have multiple requests in the chat asking for you to come back after this summer, Danny, and tell us all about your adventures in Germany and about obviously Disneyland, and go more deep dive into some of these amazing destinations that you've been to. But I got to say thank you for even coming on one time, and now then I have to ask you to come on a second time.
I would be happy to come back. And, this has been such a nice thing for me to do forums. I've done, like I said, I've been doing things that are educational about the company. And I love it. And I love going to, see old guests, or former guests, I should say, along the road, and just to hear the comments, to hear that people enjoyed their time. Ooh, I get choked up about this. I'll read my reviews at the end of the season, and I'll start crying when people give me good ones. The bad ones I don't care about. It's the good ones I get all choked up about, because you really feel a sense of, my gosh, I can't believe that all the hard work that we put into this really paid off. And look at what this person's experience is and what they say. So I'm such a crier, sorry.
I love it.
But and then if anybody wants to, if people have questions, if we have people that I haven't met before, please reach out to me on my Instagram account at Adventure Guide Danny. I'm there. I'm trying to be much better about posting things. I've been doing reels lately for every trip that I've guided, with sort of a slideshow of everything that I experienced when I was in these destinations, to kind of hype you up about what there is to offer if you come on the trips, not necessarily just with me, but with Adventures by Disney in general. So check me out, Adventure Guide Danny at Instagram.
Well, thank you so much, Danny. Thanks so much, Karen. Thanks to everyone watching. We really appreciate it. We will be back at our regular time next week, 5:30 p.m. Pacific, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, talking with guest Wesley about some firsts he experienced as a gold cruiser on Disney Cruise Line. Hope to see you watching, but thanks for everybody for watching and joining today.
Well, thanks to everyone out there for listening this week. We really, really appreciate it. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you can keep getting great content from us every week. In fact, twice a week we publish shows. So be sure to hit the subscribe button to get all of those great episodes. And if you want to watch us live, we have a live show now every week, Monday nights, 5:30 p.m. Pacific, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, over on youtube.com/DCLDuo. So be sure to head over and check that out. If you want to help support the show, be sure to hit those 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. And if you leave us a written review, a 5-star written review, we will read it at the top of one of our main episodes. So please head over there and hit those 5 stars. Of course, you can also help support the show by supporting our fabulous show sponsor, My Path Unwinding Travel. If you want to book your next Disney vacation, head over to mypathunwinding.com/DCLDuo, or email them at DCLDuo@mypathunwinding.com so they know we sent you their way. If you've got questions or you'd like to connect with us, the best way to do that is to head over to DCLDuo.com. It's got links to all of our things, full catalog of the podcast episodes, including a searchable catalog for the podcast, links off to our vlog, a link to our Etsy store where we sell some fun fan-inspired magnets, link to our Patreon if you'd like to help directly support the show each and every month. Just head over to the website or patreon.com/DCLDuo. Also has a way for you to sign up for our Substack newsletter that we're hoping to start really pumping out monthly here at least, and a few blog articles that we've written. So DCLDuo.com is the best way to connect with us. You can also, of course, email us at info@DCLDuo.com, or reach out to us on our voicemail line at 402-413-5590. That's 402-413-5590. The DCL Duo podcast is not affiliated with Disney Cruise Line, the Disney Company, or the Disney family of theme parks. The views expressed on the show are solely those of the individuals on the podcast and in no way reflect the views of the Disney Company or Disney Cruise Line. If you have questions about a Disney cruise or a Disney vacation, please contact the great folks over at My Path Unwinding Travel or Disney directly, or your own travel agent. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time for another fabulous adventure with the DCL Duo. Good night.